Hi, friends, and welcome to my channel. This is a podcast where I share my insights. And today I want to talk about exceptionalism. And that's dealing with the special case. If you've ever been a leader of a group and you have to bring everybody together, you'll know how difficult it is to deal with people who feel they are a special case and that what is happening to them is an exception. And I want to talk about the recovering from the illusion of exceptionalism and how the universe is fair and balanced once you understand its lawful nature. So I hope you'll stick around and listen to what I have to say about exceptionalism and being a special case. For several years, I was in administration in higher education. And often I would deal with students and parents who felt as though they had been treated unfairly. This usually occurred at the end of a semester after the grades came out, where students would contest the grade they received, claiming to have been some personalized victim of the professor. I am not saying that professors never get personally involved, but it's rare. And so there were just a couple of ways of checking this, whether or not the professor followed the syllabus or not. And in the 4 years I was department chair, I only found one case where the professor was vague about the grading scale. Otherwise, I wouldn't budge. And so I want you to reflect on the times in your life where you have felt personally attacked, that the situation that was happening to you was unfair. And really, there's nothing you can do about it. If you think about people who believe, and they feel this is true, trust me, a student who comes to you with a real concern about being treated unfairly, they really, really believe this to be true. So this is where compassion comes in really, really handy. Because if you've ever been on the other side of that personal, everything's very, very personal, you understand how very difficult it is to see the impersonal nature, which is what I hope to teach you if you are a regular watcher of my podcast. That awakening to the impersonal nature is one of the most liberating experiences. Not making your situation into an enemy. That's all this is. Because once it happens, you can't correct it. There's no rectification to reality. Reality is a done deal. And we don't get any do-overs. That's what you realize. Even in choices which seem to be deliberate and intentional, those things, if you are really paying attention to yourself, you as the conscious awareness are the last to know. Now, some people won't understand this. They won't understand that the conscious mind is the last to know. That's the physical mind-body construct. But that there is a greater sense I call it a preeminence that goes before thought, intention, action, that makes it seem like a done deal, and that the sense of control and free will is what we're dealing with here. So we often go through our lives feeling as though we are a special case. Now, Western Christianity does us no service in promoting a human God. I may be completely out of line here, but I have a feeling that the people who watch this channel will understand what I mean, that there was no God born on December 25th in Bethlehem, and that every child that is born on the planet is God born in human form. That's it. That's the way this goes. And our formation is to realize the impersonal nature of our circumstance. And that's one of our fundamental purposes in life, is to awaken to the hypnosis of the individual. And as you do, you will realize that you're no special case, and that God did not put you on the planet to single you out in the ways that the ego would think it to be. In other words, there's no way to win. And the ego is in a game of one-upmanship. We're gonna figure out how to win life. And when you realize that life is completely impersonal and balanced and fair and beautiful and perfect, that frees you from the trap of being a victim. And there's a certain kind of playfulness that comes out in your character. You naturally become generous, playful, frivolous, and ultimately unconditionally loving. If those are the two things you get from me by watching this channel, it's that your nature is gooey and ooey and soft. And at the heart of every human being is the potential to discover the unconditioned. That is only possible when the individual nature has exhausted itself. When we realize the madness of feeling ourselves to be hand-selected, you can really get tripped up and thinking that you're the only person God cares about, or you're the only person that God never hears or pays attention to, or whatever. To me, spiritual insight, or insights into truth is what I'm trying to teach, is a discovery that there is an equal amount of gravity all over the planet. Everybody is affected by gravity the same way. There's no more gravity over there than there is over here. In the same way, there's no more or less air for people to breathe. And there is no more or less creativity for people to use. And there's no more or less intelligence for us to take full advantage of. And there's no if about it. I'm not going to teach, this is how you unlock your potential. I don't think potential is locked any more than gravity is locked or air is locked. You see? To me, it's all free. It's all freely given. And this discovery of abundance is upon you. That the very nature of these words is that you are discovering your own potential. When I say your own, I mean the only potential, the one and only, you see. And this comes from contemplating deeply the origins of life and how the universe formed. If you believe God made the universe, you and I are not going to see this eye to eye. I see the universe being invaginated into seed form and growing into an environment which is also the universe. So the universe managed to limit itself, and I hate to use the word limit because there is no limit, but it seemed to have concealed itself in form and discovered itself. And you go to the origins of life and you see there is no breakage of lineage to the beginning of time. There are no separate events, no separate people, no separate things. And that the connectivity of it all is in a realm that's often been called the inner life. And if you want to know what the inner life is like, then you have to contemplate the internet. The internet is a non-local intelligence which contains billions and billions and trillions of bits of information that are delivered to computers that you can connect to the internet via a wireless system. And I see the individual person in the same way that I see an individual laptop or computer that is connected to the inner realm. Caroline Myss calls this the inner net. This is what I would call the mind of my mind, right? So you have your laptop has a little brain, but that brain is connected to the brain, right? And that's how I feel about a human being, that the human being is connected to a mind of their own mind, a being of their own being, a heart of their own heart. And the deeper you go into the inner realm, the more connected you feel, and the less the individual has any kind of control. It's a free-flowing body of information and ideas floating in an unlimited intelligence that you may access at any time. And how is that accessed? It is accessed more deeply in contemplation, stillness, silence, solitude. That. And I feel what is exceptional today, but hasn't always been this way, is people spending time in solitude, quiet, and reflection. What's different from human beings than maybe Native Americans or people who did not have all of the distractions we have today? What's the exception, what looks like the exception, are those of us who practice silence, who practice quiet, who yearn for it, really. And that's not even a condition. That's not a choice. Nothing's a choice. Like I've said before, the silence will discover you. And in that, you can dive into and access deeper parts of this inner realm. And the deeper you go into it, the less fear you have. You just trust more and more. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, it says, any attempt at a spiritual life will calm your greatest fears. So it's not until fear has had its way with you that you will discover the beauty of disappearing as the individual, and that there is no exception. There is no exception to who you are. There is only being who you are. That's the key. There is no alternative Ryan Hebert. That's just the name, by the way. There's no alternative. I can't fake being who I am. I could try to fake who I am, but you'd see through it. That's what's so funny about insights into truth like this, is you begin to see what appears as a pseudo-truth or an insincerity in the ego. And that is accentuated in the individual who believes that they are a special case. And I love some of the things Caroline Myss says. She says, why shouldn't you have this disability? Why shouldn't you have this illness? Why shouldn't you have a bald head? Why shouldn't you be this age? Why shouldn't you have been born into this family? Why shouldn't you be living at this time? It's really important to get into the ins and outs of what makes you feel special. What makes you feel competitive with other people. What I'd like you to do is get into the parts of yourself that feels connective. And that's how you unleash power. The more that you feel this direct connection to truth, sovereignty, the more you will fall in love with who you are. I never want to lead anybody who watches this channel to believe that who you are is dictated by what's outside of you. That the value of your life can be measured by anything that appears out there. That's the myth I'm trying to dispel. That a sense of fullness will come to you. You don't seek it. In the same way that today came to you, and your birth came to you, and your death will come to you, and ideas come to you. Everything occurs to you, and the conscious mind is the last to know. But too many people think the conscious mind is the first to know. The mind-body construct goes before. That is not correct. What goes before is your preeminence, what we all are, in form. And there is no exception to this lawful nature. To me, the lawful nature is love. And the discovery of that deep, ooey-gooey central love yields the only power there is in the universe. Love. And our journey is to evolve, which looks a lot like love backwards. And what you're trying to do is remember who you are. Birth is a forgetting, and living is a remembering who you are. That's what your journey is, to remember. And what makes the illusion of the individual is that you have forgotten who you are. And you have not contemplated what goes after death. You think that death is going to be something to be feared, but you already know what it's like. What do you mean you already know what it's like to die? Well, you just have to go back in your memory and you tell me what it was like before you were born. It seemed fine. I don't know anything about what it was like before I was born. So, to me, death will probably have some kind of similar property. It'll be fine. You see? Completely unknown. But yet, strangely comforting to know that when I die, it'll be just like when I was dead before. I was dead for 13-something billion years. You see? And so when I die, it'll be just like that. Hunky-dory. Now, there could be more to it. But I do not believe fundamentally that non-existence, if you will, is real. Non-existence is concealed in a forgettery. That's what I think. Because existence and non-existence are of the same substance. How do we know this? You go back to the beginnings of the universe and notice that it was invaginated within itself and it grew into itself. So the universe is of itself. It grows into itself. It is not growing into a foreign land. It is growing into itself. And you are growing into yourself. And everyone is growing into themselves. And although we express ourselves in a unique way, no one is uniquely unique. Now, I've just said a bunch of stuff, but it takes a while to sit with a lot of these concepts to get into the inner realm. To get into the inner realm, a lot of the outer, so-called outer realm has to be muted. And too many of us are swept up into the outer realm. There's nothing wrong with that. I had a beautiful life in the outer realm until I sort of hit a boundary and realized, okay, I want to advance. There's something in me wanted to advance. And so this inner realm called me and said, to advance, you must be promoted. And we are all being promoted into our sovereignty, into our highest, most beautiful and pure form of love. That's it. There's nothing besides love on the other side of form. Even the worst person on the planet is connected to the potential to love. And that power can be used for good or evil. Let's not get into the good or evil because that is two faces of the same power. The question is, once you begin to get into your deeper power, how are you going to use it? Likely, you're going to use it to serve. To think of creative ways to help people become themselves rather than the exception. We're never going to lose our unique characteristics. We're simply going to lose our connection to them, our preoccupation with them, and our addiction to them. So, join me in deep contemplation into the silence and the stillness and discover the inner net, which is calling you towards unconditional love, joy, service, play, gratitude, generosity. Nothing is ours as individuals. Our circumstances, none of it. So you once you discover that, you approach it with reverence, as if you are borrowing it. Nothing is yours. And it's the attempt to dominate it and control it, which seems to accentuate suffering. And victimization is a feeling that you're on the bottom in a ranking order of individuals. No such thing. Gravity's everywhere. Air is everywhere. Love is everywhere. And it's connecting to that unconditioned state that's calling you home now. If you've just heard those words, this inner life is enriching. And I'm happy. As the individual self fades, the one will begin to connect to itself through you, as you, and in you. And you will be born a new presence. Yet you will be the same person, but a completely different presence. The light of the world, your Christ nature, your Buddha nature. How do you know? You're going to be drawn to play, fun, frivolity, love, joy, the gooey things, the soft things, the cuddly things, the childlike things, curiosity. You'll live naively, and in that naivete, you will develop something called trust, which is an inborn security which comes from within, not out there. My name is Ryan Hebert. I hope that you found these insights helpful to you. Please check out my blog if you have a moment. It's called mymorningmotivator.com.